Hi, it's Kevin Lobates here, and today I thought I would touch on that old chestnut, namely Bitcoin and gold as stores of value. So first an observation, namely that because there's a hard limit on the number of Bitcoins that can ever be mined, namely 21 million, at the moment there is just under 0.003 Bitcoin per person available. And that means that you can buy your share of global Bitcoin for about $25 at today's market prices. So it's kind of an interesting observation, because when it comes to gold, the quantity of gold that's out there goes up and down all the time, and we're not even entirely 100% sure how many tons of it have been mined and are stored. At the moment, gold is actually being consumed for electronic purposes in a way that it cannot be properly reclaimed, but similarly we don't know how much gold there is out there that can be mined. There are some estimates, but it's all a bit sort of vague in comparison. Now, there's one thing that Bitcoin and gold have in common, namely that their dollar value is actually not anything intrinsic or inherent. They are both artificial creations or abstractions of the concept of store of value. The price of gold does not reflect its utility, and the price of Bitcoin does not reflect some kind of magical property that it has, or some desirable property that it has, other than purely through virtue of its function as a store of value. However, the concept of store of value is actually a very, very valuable one, because it allows us to abstract financial transactions, and money has the same property. Now, I'm sure that back in the old days, when people were trading onions for eggs, and somebody came up with the idea of coinage and money, there were skeptics who said, no, an egg can feed me for a meal, and an onion can flavor my soup, and a coin isn't edible, it doesn't do anything for me. But over time, people became more and more aware of the usefulness of having some kind of medium of exchange and store of value that wasn't actually dependent on a utility. It got rid of the bartering economy. So Bitcoin is just an extension of that. It has all the properties of gold in that sense, except for one, namely a long history of being useful for that purpose. So gold's been around for millennia serving this function, whereas Bitcoin's only been around for 10 years or so doing the same thing. However, it does have one huge advantage over gold, namely that you can transact automatically over computer networks. You see, gold is heavy, you need to pay in order to store it and move it around. It's a bit of a pain in the neck, whereas Bitcoin is weightless and can be transmitted from one side of the planet to the other instantaneously, without having to rely on some middleman to transport it or store it or move it from one vault to another, where one vault has one nation's flag on, the other vault has another nation's flag on it. So I think that, to me, sums up the real value of a cryptocurrency. Once you've bootstrapped it up to actually represent value, then you gain all these extra financial capabilities that our traditional stores of value just do not have, and it gets rid of a lot of the downsides of these things. So of course gold has one other advantage, namely that it's pretty, but I would argue that that prettiness is actually something, an emotion that is raised in us because we have the sense that it's valuable. A chest full of gold doubloons is appealing because of the history of gold and because of the value that it has been assigned with. There's nothing, again, inherent about a shiny yellow metal being attractive. Why not copper? Well, copper's pretty too, but it's also much more common. It doesn't have the same inherent value, it doesn't have the same value associated with it. So bit of a ramble here. There was some point that I wanted to make at the end, but I kind of lost it. Anyway, there you go. Bitcoin, I think, at the moment is poised to be the new gold, and I can see that people who need to store value, once it starts being less volatile, or as long as it proves itself over a long period of time to continually rise in value, is going to be something that I can see people moving to from gold, precisely because of its convenience. So there you go, that's my take on Bitcoin versus gold. Obviously I'm going to fall heavily in the Bitcoin camp. The only gold I have is a wedding band on my left ring finger. Anyway, there you go, that's it for today, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.